In this lesson, you will create a series of test renderings that will become increasingly realistic as you adjust rendering preferences. You will use global illumination and final gather to bounce light into an interior and create the best quality results. Open the 3D House 5 project file, and then type v-enter to open the View Manager. Double-click on View from Kitchen and change the visual style from realistic to wireframe, and then click OK. It's too much for the graphics card to display the visual indication on the screen while you're creating renderings. It's always a good idea to switch into wireframe view before you start making test renders. Then we can go up here and turn on the sky background and illumination, and turn on full shadows. Click this teapot icon to make a test render. The teapot is the symbol of computer graphics. This opens a separate render window. And what's happening right now is it's rendering the direct illumination, which is the light that comes directly from the light sources and strikes surfaces. It's not simulating bounced light, however, and that's why we're not seeing any illumination on the ceiling or the back walls. Close the render window and type RPREF, which stands for Rendering Preferences, and press Enter. That opens the Advanced Render Settings palette over here. Scroll down and locate the Indirect Illumination panel and toggle this on for global illumination. What this will do is bounce photons from the light sources throughout the space, and the photons will carry color and intensity information all around the interior. Do another test render and see the difference. It's way too bright. Press Escape. We need to change the exposure. Go back to the Advanced Render Settings palette, scroll up to the top, and change exposure type from automatic to logarithmic. Then expand the render slide out and click Adjust Exposure. A preview will be rendered here in a moment, and it will give us a rough idea of the exposure. It looks pretty good, but AutoCAD is assuming that this is an exterior model. So let's change this from auto to off. Now the preview looks more like our actual test render. Click here to adjust the brightness value, which is 65 by default. Let's try 35 and press Tab. That's getting better, but it still looks maybe too bright. Change that to 25 and press Tab. That's getting better. It has some bright areas and some darker areas. Click OK and do another test render by clicking the teapot. Now we're getting light bounced all around the space. It's definitely an improvement over the initial render, but we still have some distance to go until this really is photorealistic. We have some splotches on the wall back here, and we have this bright area on the wall which shouldn't be there. So we need to make some changes to the render preferences. Close the window and go back and open the Advanced Render Settings palette and scroll down. Let's change the way that the photons are working. Right now, use radius is off, so they're bouncing sort of haphazardly through the space. Let's change this to on and set the radius value to 1 foot. I'll type 12, enter. And this time, instead of creating a test render of the whole screen, let's create a render region. Open this flyout and select Render Region, and then click two corners to draw a rectangle around the area that you want to render. I'm concerned with the light on this back wall, so I'll make a rectangle in that area. Now the rendering is happening, and it's going to show it to us on the screen in a moment. We're getting a lot of coverage of those photons back there. That's an improvement, because when we blend the photons together, we'll end up with a nice smooth rendering in the end. Let's go ahead and open the palette again over here on the left. Right now, Final Gather mode is set to auto, which means it could be off. Let's change that to on to force a Final Gather. What Final Gather does is it takes all of those photons, gathers them together, and blends the result. So let's go ahead and render again. Let's do a render region in that same area. The Final Gather results are starting to come in, and at first they're very blocky. The way it works is it progressively refines the results. The squares get smaller and smaller until eventually we'll have a nice continuous gradation of light. That's starting to look good. Okay, I think we're ready to make a final render. Go up to the teapot icon, open its flyout, and choose Render. This will take some time as the results come in. There's a record of the test renderings that you made here at the bottom of the render window, and you can click through them to see how far you've come. If you want to save a particular rendering, you can right-click and choose Save or Save Copy. So in this video, you learned how to configure the render preferences to create a photorealistic rendering of an architectural interior. You approach the end result by performing a series of test renders to refine the quality in each step along the way.